Rain blew sideways across the parking lot of Ridgewood Grocery, the kind of late October storm that rattles aluminum awnings and makes every stray shopping cart clang like a loose bell. The air smelled of wet asphalt and sour leaves, the sky a low bruise over the small Massachusetts town. Ethan Ward tightened the zipper of his frayed gray hoodie and nudged the back door of his aging Honda Civic shut with his hip. He was 35, with the worn-in look of a man who'd learned to live with both struggle and stubborn hope. His dark hair curled slightly from the misting rain, and fatigue lined the edges of his eyes, soft brown eyes that had once looked rested before life insisted otherwise. He lifted a plastic bag of groceries, balancing it carefully so the carton of eggs wouldn't crush under the weight of canned soup. Through the back window, he could see his daughter, Lily, bundled in a purple jacket, her small face pressed against the glass as she traced shapes in the foggy condensation. "Daddy," she called, muffled through the window. "My pumpkin bread's getting cold." "I know, Bug," Ethan said, opening the front passenger door. "We'll be home in 10. Your grandmother would have said it's better cold anyway." "She always lied about that," Lily said with a tiny grin. Ethan's heart tugged, not because she was wrong, but because she said it like she remembered, like she still felt her grandmother's warm hands guiding hers through a bowl of flour and cinnamon. But Lily had only been 5 when cancer hollowed out the bright center of their family. Now she was 8, clever, sensitive, watchful. She carried memories the way some kids carried backpacks, overloaded and quietly heavy. Ethan shut the door, rounded toward the driver's side, and froze. A figure huddled near the cart returned. At first it looked like someone crouched to tie a shoe, but then the shape shifted, and he realized it was a woman sitting with her back against the metal frame, arms wrapped around herself like she was trying to keep her bones from flying apart. Her coat was thin, the fabric stiff with old stains, rain soaking through as though it offered no protection at all. Wet hair clung to her cheeks. Ethan hesitated. The rain made her blend into everything washed out and forgotten in the lot. People streamed around her, a couple arguing over coupons, a teenager pushing a cart too fast, an older man carrying a bouquet of cheap supermarket roses. No one looked at her. No one even flinched. He wasn't the type to get involved. Not anymore. After Kristen died, after the medical bills had turned his savings into dust, after working 2 jobs still left him choosing between rent and groceries some months, he'd learned how thin the ice of kindness could be, how giving too much could pull you under. But something about the woman made him pause, a flicker of protectiveness he thought grief had drained right out of him. And the truth was, he'd been where she was. Not homeless, not quite, but close enough to understand the taste of fear when money ran out and options dried up. Close enough to remember what it was like to pray someone, anyone, would see you. "Bugged," he said, leaning into the car. "Give me a minute, okay?" "Why?" Lily narrowed her eyes. "You look like you're doing something sneaky." "It's grown-up sneaky," he said. "The good kind." She nodded solemnly, accepting this answer far more easily than he deserved. He closed the door and walked toward the cart return. As he approached, he realized the woman wasn't young, maybe mid-40s, but hardship had carved years into her features that nature never intended. Her hands shook, not from drugs, he suspected, but from cold and hunger. When she lifted her head slightly, her eyes were startling, bright green yet exhausted, the kind of exhaustion that went deeper than sleep. "Ma'am," Ethan said gently, "you okay?" The woman flinched. Then she blinked as though bracing herself for an insult, a command to leave, or the kind of pity that felt more like a slap than kindness. "I'm fine," she murmured, her voice barely audible. "Please, just go on. I'm not bothering anyone." "You're not," Ethan said. He exhaled. Rain drummed against the metal overhead. "Have you had anything to eat today?" Her lips pressed together, a battle between truth and pride. Finally she swallowed. "No." Ethan nodded once, not making a big deal of it. "Can I?" He lifted the bag in his hand. "I've got a sandwich in here, turkey and cheddar, and some bottled water. You're welcome to it." Her brow creased. Suspicion flared, the defensive instinct of someone who had learned that help often came with strings or humiliation. "Why?" "Because it's raining," he said simply, And because I have more food than you do right now. The woman looked down, rain dripping from her nose. I don't want trouble. You won't get it from me. She hesitated, then nodded almost imperceptibly. Ethan knelt, setting the bag to WN in front of her. I'm Ethan. She looked at him again, really looked this time, as if trying to decide whether his kindness was real or just another storm she'd have to weather. Marissa, she said quietly. He smiled, but not pityingly, just human to human. Hi, Marissa. He pulled out the sandwich, still warm from the grocery cafe heaters, and placed it in her hands. She held it carefully, like it was something fragile, like it was something she didn't quite trust to be hers. You sure? She whispered. Positive. When she took the first bite, Ethan stood, not wanting to hover or watch her eat, which always felt demeaning to someone already carrying the weight of desperation. I should get my daughter home, he said, but if you need a ride somewhere, I can. No, she interrupted quickly. Thank you really, but I'll be okay. He wasn't convinced, but he also knew better than to push. Take care, he said. She looked up again, and for one fleeting second gratitude broke through the rain and exhaustion, something raw and luminous crossing her face. Thank you, Ethan, she murmured. I won't forget this. He didn't know why her words settled strangely in his chest, like a promise or a warning. He returned to the car, shook the rain from his hoodie, and slid into the driver's seat. Did you give her something? Lily asked immediately. Yeah, Ethan said, just some food. Was she cold? Very. Lily was quiet for a moment, her small fingers playing with the zipper on her jacket. Mom would have given her a blanket. Ethan swallowed hard. Yeah, he said softly, she would have. The drive home took them past rows of oak and maple trees shedding their last stubborn leaves, through quiet neighborhoods lit by the warm glow of porch lights. Houses looked cozy, secure, little islands against the uncertainty of the world. At their own small two-bedroom rental, Ethan helped Lily out of the car and unlocked the front door, the scent of pumpkin spice from the morning's baking still lingering. He hung their jackets, flipped on the hallway light, and tried to shake off the lingering image of Marissa's trembling hands. Later, after Lily finished her homework and drifted to sleep clutching her stuffed fox, Ethan settled onto the couch with his laptop. The glow illuminated the lines of tiredness on his face. He had bills to sort, shift schedules to update, and a school permission slip that had gone missing for the third time. His phone buzzed, a text from his coworker at the auto shop. Ray. Hey man, Smith's Honda is back tomorrow. Prep the bay early, boss wants it done by noon. Ethan groaned. Yeah, because who needs sleep? He typed back a thumbs up. The rest of the night passed unevenly. Coffee gone cold on the table, receipts spread like confetti of a life lived paycheck to paycheck. When he finally dragged himself to bed close to midnight, rain still pattered softly outside. Before drifting off, an image flickered behind his eyelids. Marissa under that cart return, her shoulders hunched, her eyes so unmistakably human amid a world that kept forgetting to care. He wondered where she was now. He wondered if she was safe. He didn't know it yet, but this small act of kindness, this simple offering of a sandwich and a moment of dignity, was the first thread in a chain that would pull open doors he didn't even know existed. Doors he wasn't sure he wanted to walk through. 3 days passed. Life slipped into its usual pattern. Early mornings, frantic lunches, school drop-offs, overtime shifts, rushed dinners, bedtime stories. The kind of rhythm that left little space to think, let alone worry about the strangers who wandered through the edges of one's days. But Marissa kept creeping back into Ethan's thoughts. In the grocery store aisle when he passed the sandwich case. At the stoplight near Ridgewood Park. In Lily's innocent questions about people without homes. Did she have a family? Lily asked one morning in the car. I don't know, Ethan said. Maybe she's lost, she murmured. People can be lost even if they're grown-ups. He glanced at her in the rearview mirror. Yeah, he said, they can. But Ethan didn't see Marissa again. Not outside the grocery store, not downtown, not anywhere. Homelessness had a way of making people disappear, swallowed by the corners of society few bothered to look into. It wasn't until the following Wednesday, when the sun finally broke through the clouds and the crisp air smelled faintly of fireplace smoke, that the next thread pulled taut. Ethan and Lily had just returned home from school pickup. He dropped his keys in the bowl by the door when a soft knock startled them. Lily peeked up at him. "Are we expecting someone?" "No," Ethan said slowly. He crossed the living room toward the front window and pulled back the curtain. Two women stood on the porch. One wore a tailored navy blue blazer, her hair pinned neatly at the nape of her neck. The other carried a leather briefcase, her expression alert but not unfriendly. "Lawyers." "What the hell?" Ethan opened the door only halfway. "Can I help you?" The woman in the blazer offered a polite but guarded smile. "Mr. Ethan Ward?" "Yes." "I'm Julia Park," she said, handing him a business card. "And this is my colleague, Rebecca Sloan. We represent a client who recently had an interaction with you." Ethan stiffened instinctively. "Interaction?" "Yes," Julia said. "A woman named Marissa." His pulse spiked. "She's okay, right? Nothing happened to her." "She's safe," Julia said carefully, "and she asked us to speak with you." Behind him, Lily peeked around his arm. Rebecca offered a gentle smile at her before continuing. "Mr. Ward, may we come in? We'd like to discuss something of importance." Ethan hesitated. Lawyers never showed up for good reasons. Not at rented houses containing mismatched furniture and overdue utility bills. Definitely not on behalf of homeless women he'd fed in a parking lot. Something felt off, like stepping into a room where the lighting was wrong and the silence too precise. Still, they knew her name, they knew his name, and if Marissa needed something. "Okay," he said finally, stepping aside. "Come in." They entered, professional but respectful. Ethan motioned toward the couch while quickly kicking aside a stray sneaker on the rug. Lily hovered near the hallway, curious but wary. "Mr. Ward," Julia began, smoothing a crease in her blazer. "Our client has recently come into possession of certain information, significant information, regarding you." Ethan frowned. "Information I don't understand." "Marissa gave us instructions," Rebecca added, "to contact you immediately and deliver a message, and also a request." Ethan's confusion deepened. "A request?" Julia nodded. Then she spoke the words that would unravel everything Ethan thought he knew about that rainy evening in the parking lot. "Mr. Ward," she said softly, "Marissa wanted us to tell you she didn't just disappear. She's preparing to change your life." Ethan stared. The room felt suddenly too small, the air too tight. "What does that mean?" he whispered. Julia opened her briefcase. Rebecca watched him carefully. And from the hallway, Lily's voice, thin, uncertain, floated through the tension. "Daddy, what's happening?" Ethan didn't have an answer. But he was about to. The moment the two lawyers settled onto Ethan's sagging couch, the living room felt smaller, as though the air itself leaned in to listen. The overhead light cast long, amber shadows across the wood floor, catching dust motes suspended like tiny, nervous planets. Lily stood partially concealed in the hallway, wide eyes peering from behind the chipped edge of the doorframe. Ethan shot her a reassuring glance, one that said it's fine, even though he was nowhere near believing that himself. Julia folded her hands neatly in her lap. "Mr. Ward, before we begin, I need to ask, would you prefer your daughter step into another room?" Ethan shook his head. "If you're here on behalf of someone I helped for 15 minutes in a grocery store parking lot, I think it's safe for her to stay." Rebecca exchanged a glance with Julia, an unspoken conversation passing between them. Something about that look unsettled Ethan. It wasn't condescending or cold, it was cautious. Julia inhaled. "Very well, we'll do our best to keep this straightforward, but some of what we say may come as a surprise." Ethan tried to force a small laugh. "Surprises? My rent went up last month without warning, my car battery died on the highway last week, and my daughter's school fundraiser wants every parent to donate $50 for a raffle basket. Not sure what could shock me anymore. Rebecca opened a leather folder and slid out a thin packet of papers. She didn't hand them to him yet, just placed them gently on the coffee table between them. "Mr. Ward," she began, her voice calm but deliberate, "our client, Marissa, wishes you to understand that the woman you met was not exactly who she appeared to be." Ethan stiffened, meaning. Julia leaned forward slightly. "The version of her you saw, the struggling, unhoused woman, that was a chapter of her life, yes. A painful and complicated one, but she has another history as well." Ethan's pulse drummed in his ears. What history? Another glance between the lawyers, then Julia spoke. "Her full name is Marissa Caldwell." The name meant nothing to Ethan. The blankness on his face must have shown because Rebecca added, "Caldwell as in Caldwell Industries." Still nothing. Rebecca blinked. The manufacturing conglomerate, based out of Boston, her father was Daniel Caldwell. That name he recognized. Everyone in Massachusetts did. The Caldwells were old money, big money. The kind of money with wings and echoes, rippling through politics, charity events, and glossy business magazines he'd never even picked up. "Wait," Ethan saw. Id slowly, his voice tightening. "You're telling me that woman, the woman I saw in the rain, is the daughter of a billionaire?" Julia nodded gently. "Yes." No, that doesn't make sense. If she's rich, why would she be?" He gestured helplessly, hands slicing through the air. "Homeless," Rebecca finished softly. He flinched, the word hit harder spoken aloud. "Yes," Julia said. "It's complicated, but for reasons we'll allow her to explain herself when she's able. She stepped away from her family, her finances, and her identity several years ago. She's been living independently and often precariously. By choice, but not without consequence." Ethan sank back into the chair, mind reeling as though the ground beneath him had shifted half a foot to the right. "So why come to me?" he asked. "Why send lawyers? I gave her a sandwich, that's it. That doesn't make me part of whatever this is." Rebecca slid the packet toward him. "Because she insisted that your act, small as you believe it to be, matters. And because she is preparing legal steps that involve you directly." Ice crawled down Ethan's spine. "What legal steps?" Julia clasped her hands again. "Before I answer that, she asked that we deliver a message to you verbatim." Ethan swallowed. "Okay." Julia opened a small notebook and read. "Tell him that the kindness he gave freely changed more than he knows, and that I intend to honor that kindness in full." The words were soft, almost lyrical. They hung in the air like a refrain waiting for music. But they didn't clear anything up, not even close. Ethan rubbed a hand over his jaw. "I don't understand. What is she planning, and why me?" Rebecca reached into the folder again and produced a single envelope, heavy, cream-colored, sealed with a deep green wax stamp. She held it out with both hands. "This contains a personal letter from Marissa," she said, "along with documents she wanted you to review. She's resting at the moment, under supervised care, and asked us not to disclose certain details until you've read what she wrote." Ethan took the envelope, its weight strange and almost ceremonial in his hand. Lily tiptoed closer, whispering, "Is she sick?" Both lawyers paused. And then Julia nodded softly. "She is recovering, but she has a legal timeline she wishes addressed promptly. She may also want to see you." Ethan's heart hammered. This was spiraling too fast, too strangely. "I'm just a mechanic," he said, breathing unevenly. "I didn't do anything special. People help strangers all the time." Rebecca shook her head. "Not like you did." Ethan frowned. "It was just food." "It wasn't just food," Julia said. "It was dignity." Her words struck him harder than expected, because he suddenly remembered, really remembered, Marissa's face when he'd walked toward her. How she'd braced herself, how she'd looked ready for cruelty, not kindness. "Mr. Ward," Rebecca continued gently, "our client has chosen to name you in a forthcoming legal filing. We're here to inform you, answer preliminary questions, and if you agree to schedule a meeting between you and Marissa." The room felt too warm now. Ethan stood abruptly and paced, hands on his hips. "Named in a filing? What kind of filing? Am I in trouble? Is this some liability thing because I gave her food? Did someone sue her? Did?" Julia lifted a hand. "Please take a breath. It's nothing criminal, but it is significant." "Define significant." Julia hesitated. "Major financial decisions, personal directives, potential transfer of responsibility." That only made it worse. "Financial?" Ethan repeated, voice cracking between disbelief and fear. "No, no, absolutely not. I can't be involved in whatever family drama or trust stuff she's dealing with. I don't know her, she doesn't know me." "That," Rebecca said softly, "is precisely why she chose you." He stopped pacing. "What?" "Because," Julia explained, "you helped her without expectation, motive, bias, or knowledge of her background. That matters to her." A beat of heavy silence. Lily tugged at his sleeve. "Daddy, are we going to be rich?" The lawyers both looked startled. Ethan crouched beside her. "Sweetheart, no, this isn't about that." But a small, traitorous voice in his own mind whispered, "Isn't it?" Rebecca cleared her throat. "This doesn't mean you're inheriting anything. We're not saying that, but she is placing you in a position of importance. At the very least, she wants you to hear her intentions directly." Ethan looked down at the sealed envelope. His name was written in looping, elegant handwriting that didn't match the trembling woman in the cart return. It felt surreal, like holding a letter from a stranger who somehow knew him deeply. "What if I say no?" he asked. Julia's expression softened, almost pitying. "You can decline involvement, but we strongly recommend reading the letter first. At the very least, it will give clarity, and Marissa deserves that." "Much." He exhaled shakily. "Where is she?" "In a private care facility outside Boston," Rebecca said. "She checked herself in 2 days ago. Stabilization, rest, and evaluation. She's safe but fragile." The image of her shivering in the rain stabbed at him. "And she wants to see me?" he asked. Julia nodded. "When you're ready." He didn't know if he was ready for any of this. The lawyers rose to leave. Rebecca handed him a business card. "Call when you've read the letter, any time." Julia added, "We'll give you privacy now. But don't wait too long, Mr. Ward. Time is relevant in her circumstances." Ethan didn't ask what that meant. He didn't want to know, not yet. They stepped onto the porch, their silhouettes framed by the fading afternoon light. Before leaving, Rebecca paused. "One more thing," she said gently. "What you did that day, it mattered more than you realize. Please be open to hearing her story." Then they were gone. The house felt quiet in a hollow, echoing way, the kind of quiet that unsettles rather than soothes. Lily climbed onto the couch. "Can I open it?" He shook his head. "No, Bug, this one's for me." She nodded, curling up beside him. "Is she our friend?" Ethan didn't know how to answer that. "She's someone who needed help." "And you helped her?" He sighed. "I tried." He held the envelope between his palms, feeling the press of the wax seal. It felt foreign and sacred all at once. He thought of ignoring it, pretending none of this happened, going back to his shifts, his bills, his routine. But something inside urged him to break the seal, some instinct that what lay inside was not just about money or responsibility, but meaning, connection, maybe redemption for her, for him, for both. His thumb brushed the wax, then stopped. His phone buzzed sharply, jolting him. He glanced down. Unknown number. A text popped up. "Please read my letter, M." A tremor of unease skittered through him. She had his number. He didn't remember giving it to her. He didn't remember her asking. Outside, the wind shifted, rattling the windows like a whispered warning. Ethan stared at the envelope again. One pull, one tear, one choice. It could change everything. Or destroy everything. He wasn't sure which frightened him more. The envelope felt heavier than paper should ever feel. Ethan turned it over in his hands long after Lily had fallen asleep, her small breaths drifting from the bedroom like tiny waves rising and falling against a dark shore. The house was hushed, the kind of late-night quiet that felt expectant, like the world itself was holding its breath. Finally, with resolve, or maybe just exhaustion, he slid his thumb beneath the wax seal and cracked it open. Inside was a handwritten letter, several pages long, and a thicker document with legal headings he didn't yet dare touch. He unfolded the letter carefully, bracing himself. The first words hit like a slow-moving punch. Dear Ethan, if you're reading this, it means I finally did something I've been afraid to do for years. Ask someone decent for help. Ethan's mouth went dry. I imagine you're confused. Most people are when they see someone like me, someone who was raised with every advantage, living under the open sky, cold and invisible. It's not a simple story. I wish it were. But here is the truth, unvarnished. I left the Caldwell legacy because it was killing me. Not physically at first, but slowly in every other way a person can fade. If you grow up in a world where money replaces love, where expectations replace freedom, where silence replaces hugs, eventually you run out of room to breathe. He felt a sting behind his eyes. He hadn't expected this, not the vulnerability, not the honesty. It was strange reading the inner world of someone he barely knew, yet somehow already cared about. When my father died 2 years ago, the world assumed I'd step back into the empire. But all I felt was dread. I walked away instead. I thought I could survive by myself, and for a while I did. Then the money I kept hidden dwindled. Pride kept me from asking my family for help. Shame kept me from returning to the life I walked out of, and fear told me I didn't deserve better anymore. By the time you saw me, Ethan, I was near the end of something dark. Not just the end of my savings or my strength, but the end of my belief in humanity. Ethan swallowed hard, the rainstorm, her shaking hands, her voice so small. Then you came over. You didn't look past me, you didn't flinch, you didn't assume the worst. You offered a sandwich like you were offering a lifeline, and you were. That day I chose to get help, real help. I checked myself into a care facility and gave my lawyers instructions. My mind is clearing, my strength is returning, and I have decisions to make about my future, my family's business, and the kind of person I want to become. Which brings me to you. Ethan's heart thudded. I want you involved because you remind me what genuine kindness looks like. You gave freely at a moment I believed no one cared if I lived another day. I want to anchor my next chapter to something real, something good. I am not asking for romance. I am not asking for salvation. I am asking for your presence, your perspective, and your heart's honesty as I rebuild my life. Enclosed is a preliminary document naming you as a personal liaison and trustee over a small portion of assets I am reallocating toward charitable initiatives. It is not a trap. It is not a burden. It is an invitation to make something meaningful with me, something that helps people like the woman you approached without hesitation. You may decline everything with a single signature, but I hope you won't. Marissa. When Ethan lowered the letter, the room seemed to tilt slightly, as though he were standing at the edge of something vast and dangerous and unbearably beautiful. He couldn't finish the sentence. He opened the second document, pages full of legal language and formal declarations. His vision skimmed lines he could barely process. The establishment of a charitable trust. Ward to serve as primary external advisor. Annual compensation not to exceed. He stopped reading. He couldn't breathe. He was a single dad making less than 40 grand a year. He drove a car older than his daughter. He'd patched his shoes with superglue last month. And now a billionaire heiress he fed for 15 minutes wanted to tether him to her recovery and her fortune. He stood abruptly from the couch, pacing as adrenaline surged in erratic bursts. No, this is insane, he whispered, gripping the edge of the kitchen counter. I can't do this, I can't. But beneath the fear was something else. A tug. A flicker of purpose. a memory of her trembling in the rain. He pressed both palms to his face. What the hell am I supposed to do? A knock shattered the silence. Sharp, urgent. His whole body went rigid. Not now, please, not now. Another knock, firmer. He walked to the door cautiously, hand hovering near the deadbolt. Who is it? He called. A muffled voice answered, male, low but steady. Mr. Ward, Ethan Ward. Yes. This is Officer Delgado with the Ridgewood Police Department. I need a moment of your time. His stomach plummeted. He opened the door. Two officers stood under the porch light, rain jackets dripping. Delgado, a tall man with kind eyes, and a shorter woman named Officer Hawthorne, whom he recognized from directing school traffic. Mr. Ward, Delgado said, may we come in for a second? Is something wrong? Is Lily okay? Ethan blurted, panic rising. She's fine, Delgado assured quickly. This is about another matter. Ethan stepped aside, pulse hammering. They entered the living room, their boots squeaking against the floor. Sir, Hawthorne began, we've been asked to notify you that your name has come up in a welfare check investigation. Someone filed a request regarding a woman you interacted with recently. Ethan's heart froze. Marissa. Delgado nodded. She checked herself into a facility, yes. But earlier today, an anonymous tip was called in claiming you might have coerced or manipulated her prior to her admission. What? Ethan's voice cracked. No, I gave her food, that's it. We believe you, Hawthorne said calmly. But protocol requires we ask you a few questions. These tips sometimes come from concerned family members, sometimes from people trying to interfere. Interfere with what? Ethan asked. Delgado exchanged a careful look with his partner. With her assets, Mr. Ward. Ethan let out a sharp, bitter laugh. I don't want her money. I didn't even know who she was until today. That's why we're here, Delgado said. Your reaction doesn't match the profile of someone exploiting a vulnerable person, but we need to document your account. Ethan raked a hand through his hair. Fine, ask whatever you need. For the next 15 minutes, he told them everything, where he was, what he did, what he said. He handed them the letter. They photographed its edges but didn't read the contents. When they finished, Delgado offered a reassuring nod. We'll file this report as cooperative and non-suspicious. Most likely, the tip came from someone in the Caldwell orbit who doesn't like outsiders involved. Meaning someone rich, powerful, and threatened. As they headed for the door, Hawthorne paused. Mr. Ward, people with money like hers, their lives attract pressure, sometimes danger, be cautious. He watched them leave, his chest tight. Everything inside him screamed to run, to burn the documents, forget the lawyers, pretend none of this had ever happened. But something else whispered louder. She trusted you. He returned to the couch, letter trembling in his hands. He couldn't sleep. He couldn't think. And yet beneath the fear and confusion, a spark ignited, something he hadn't felt since before Christ. N's illness stole joy from him. Purpose. Not the paycheck-to-paycheck survival he'd grown used to. Not the endless cycle of exhaustion. Something bigger, something that mattered. He picked up his phone and dialed the number on the lawyer's card. Julia answered on the second ring. Mr. Ward. His voice shook. I need to see her. There was the faintest exhale of relief. We'll arrange it tomorrow morning. He locked the house, sat on the couch, waited for dawn. The facility was quiet, wrapped in the soft hush of expensive privacy. Pale morning light streamed through the windows as Julia escorted him down a long corridor with hardwood floors and framed paintings of New England coastlines. She's been expecting your call, Julia said. She's had good days and bad ones. Today is a stable day. Ethan's throat tightened. Is she okay? She's healing, Julia answered. But she's fragile emotionally and physically. Please speak gently. They reached a door with a small bronze plate reading room 204. Julia knocked softly. Marissa, she called. It's Julia, he's here. Ethan's heart pounded. Silence. Then a faint, warm voice. Let him in. Julia turned the handle and pushed the door open. The room was bright and airy, sunlight glancing off white linens. Marissa sat by the window, wrapped in a soft cardigan, her hair brushed but still wild around the edges. She looked fragile, but not broken. Softer, realer. When she saw him, her breath caught. "Ethan," she whispered. He stepped inside, unsure if he should approach or keep his distance. She smiled gently and motioned him closer. "You came," she murmured. "I was afraid you wouldn't." "I didn't know if I should," he admitted, voice trembling. "Your letter, everything, I'm overwhelmed." Marissa nodded. "I know, I'm sorry, my world carries echoes." She reached out, hand trembling slightly. He took it without hesitation. "I didn't choose you because I want to burden you," she said. "I chose you because you saw me, not the Caldwell name, not the mess of my past, just me." Her eyes shimmered, green and luminous. "I want to rebuild my life," she whispered. "But I can't do it anchored to the people who broke it. I need someone grounded, someone real, someone who doesn't want anything from me." Ethan swallowed hard. "Marissa, I'm a single dad who barely pays rent. I don't know anything about trusts or money or—" "I don't need you to know money," she said. "I need you to know people, compassion, truth. Those are things money can't buy." She squeezed his hand, tears sliding silently down her cheek. "And I need you to know one more thing," she added. "Someone in my family already knows your name. They're not happy about it." A chill slithered down Ethan's spine. "What does that mean?" he whispered. Marissa looked toward the window, voice trembling. "It means," she said, "you may be in danger." His breath stalled. Before he could ask more, footsteps echoed in the hallway, hurried, heavy, urgent. Julia stiffened. "Stay here," she instructed, stepping out into the corridor. Ethan's heart hammered. Marissa's fingers tightened around his. "Please don't leave me," she whispered. Outside, voices clashed, tense rising. A sharp knock, then another. Julia reappeared, face pale. "Ethan, Marissa, we have a problem." Her voice wavered. "There's someone here demanding to see her, a Caldwell family representative." Marissa went rigid with fear. "No," she breathed, "not him." Ethan stood slowly, protectively, as footsteps thundered toward their door. The handle rattled. Then a deep, authoritative voice pierced the room. "Open the door now. This conversation is over." Ethan stepped forward, not knowing that everything was about to explode. The handle rattled again, harder this time. "Open this door," the voice said, sharp and commanding. "Now." For a second, Ethan flashed back to every time some authority had pushed past him in a hospital hallway. Every moment when someone in a more expensive suit had told him what would happen to his life, his wife, his money, whether he liked it or not. Not this time. Ethan moved in front of Marissa's chair, body instinctively shifting between her and the door. His heart hammered so hard he could hear his pulse in his ears, but his stance didn't waver. Julia stepped ahead of him and cracked the door just enough to peer out. "You do not have the right to bar me from my sister," the man outside said. "I am family and a controlling member of the Caldwell board." "His sister?" Ethan felt Marissa flinch behind him. "Nathan," she whispered, voice tight with dread. Julia straightened her spine, the small woman suddenly seeming taller. "Mr. Caldwell, this is a medical facility. You will lower your voice, and you will wait until we establish terms of visitation, or I will have security escort you from the premises." There was a stunned silence, as if no one had spoken to him like that in years. Through the narrow opening, Ethan saw him. Early 50s, silvering hair cut short, suit crisp and immaculate. His eyes were a hard, polished blue, businessman eyes, scanning, calculating, already cataloging weaknesses. "Terms," Nathan scoffed. "This is my family and our money. I'm not negotiating with you in a hallway." He shouldered the door. Julia stood her ground. If you push this door again, I'll consider it an act of aggression against my client and request that you be removed." Something like fury flashed across Nathan's face, then buried itself under a thin sheet of icy control. "Fine," he said, "then I'll come in calmly." He stepped back, then pushed the door open in a measured, deliberate way, like a man who knew he was watched. His gaze swept the room. It landed on Marissa first, small, wrapped in a cardigan, pale but upright. His jaw tightened. "Riss," he said, "what have you done now?" She shrank slightly in the chair. Ethan's protective instincts roared. Then Nathan's attention snapped to him, eyes narrowing as he took in the thrift store jeans, the faded hoodie, the scuffed sneakers. "And you must be the mechanic," Nathan said. There was no heat in the words, which somehow made them worse, just disdain. "The Good Samaritan." Ethan stayed where he was. "I'm Ethan," he said, "and I'm standing here because she wants me here." Nathan's mouth curled with something between amusement and disgust. "Oh, I don't doubt that. People in her state are easily attached to whoever gives them attention." "Don't talk about her like she's not in the room," Ethan said, voice low. Julia cut in before the moment could ignite. "Mr. Caldwell, this is neither the time nor the place to litigate your sister's choices. You have 5 minutes, then you leave." He ignored her. "Riss," he repeated, a touch softer. "You checked yourself in without telling anyone. You gave these vultures," he flicked his eyes toward Julia, "access to your file. And now I hear rumors of trust documents, stranger involvement, anonymous welfare calls. Do you have any idea what this looks like?" Marissa's hands trembled in her lap, but when she spoke, her voice carried a thread of steel. "It looks like me getting help," she said. "The help you refused." Nathan's jaw tightened. "I offered you help, you turned it down." "You offered control," she corrected. "You offered conditions. You offered to put me in one of your properties with private nurses who'd report everything back to you. That isn't help, Nathan. That's a leash." His face flushed. "I was trying to protect you, protect the company." "You were trying to protect the money," she said quietly. "You always were." Silence crackled between them. Ethan could practically hear the gears of old family history grinding. Childhood fights, dinner table tensions, years of unsaid things stacked like dynamite waiting for a spark. Nathan took a breath, recalibrating. "Look, whatever resentment you're harboring, fine. We can unpack that later. Right now, I need you to rescind any legal documents you've signed involving this man." His gaze flicked to Ethan again. "Before it gets messy." Ethan's stomach twisted. "You mean the trust," he said. "Of course I mean the trust." Nathan's eyes glittered. "Caldwell assets are not a toy for your latest emotional project." Julia stepped closer. "Mr. Caldwell, your sister is of sound mind, as confirmed by the facility's evaluations. She has the right to assign her personal assets as she sees fit." "And I," he snapped, "have the right and obligation to challenge any decisions made under duress or impaired judgment. An unvetted stranger appears in her life at her lowest point, and suddenly he's on the paperwork. That's textbook exploitation." Ethan felt heat rise to his face. "You have no idea who I am." "I know enough," Nathan said coolly. "You feed a vulnerable woman in a parking lot. A week later, lawyers are at your door. Miraculous coincidence, isn't it?" "It's not a coincidence," Marissa cut in, voice shaking. "It's me, I did that." "And I'm saying you're not thinking clearly," Nathan replied. "You've been on the streets, Riss. You're not stable yet." "Don't you dare," she whispered, eyes wet. "Don't you dare use my worst moments as proof I don't deserve agency." Julia stepped between them, her posture unyielding. "Mr. Caldwell, any challenge regarding competency will be handled in court, not this room. Until then, you will not intimidate my client." Nathan glanced at her with annoyance, but there was something else there, too, worry. Not just for the money. Maybe for his sister, buried under layers of control and pride. He looked back at Ethan. "You want to help?" he asked. "Fine, walk away, don't entangle yourself in this. Take your thank you, whatever it is, and go back to your little life. You have a kid, don't you? Think about her." The words landed like a slap. "Don't bring my daughter into this," Ethan said, his voice going flat. I'm trying to, Nathan shot back, because if this goes where I think it will, you'll be dragged into litigation you cannot afford. You'll be painted as a predator in the press. Your kid will read things about her father that will scar her. And for what? A job you didn't ask for and a woman you barely know. The fear hit Ethan like a physical blow. Images flashed in his mind. Lily at school whispering classmates, headlines twisting his kindness into something ugly. He almost stepped back, almost caved. Then he felt the slight pressure of Marissa's hand on his wrist, fingers curling in desperation. I'm not giving him this, she whispered. Not again. That was enough. Ethan straightened. I didn't ask for any of this, he said, meeting Nathan's gaze steadily. You're right, I didn't, and if it were just about money, I'd sign whatever release you want and walk out of here. But this isn't just money, it's her life, her chance to do something good with what your family built. Nathan scoffed, but there was a flicker of uncertainty. So no, Ethan continued. I'm not walking away, not unless she tells me to, and she hasn't. For a moment, the air between them crackled with something dangerous. Then Nathan's expression hardened. Fine, he said, then I'll see both of you in court. He turned toward the door. And Mr. Ward, he added without looking back, I hope you can afford a lawyer, you're going to need one. The door closed with a soft but definitive click. Silence. Ethan realized his hands were shaking. Julia exhaled slowly. Well, she said, that went about as badly as it could have and exactly as I expected. Marissa sagged back against the chair, tears spilling over. I'm sorry, she whispered. I dragged you into this. I didn't think he'd move so fast. Ethan knelt in front of her. Hey, he said softly. You didn't drag me, I walked in, and I'm not going anywhere. Her eyes searched his, looking for doubt. She didn't find any. Julia's voice softened. He'll file a competency challenge and a motion to freeze the trust. We'll counter. It'll be ugly for a while, but he doesn't have the iron grip he thinks he does. Not legally, not anymore. Ethan swallowed. What does that mean for me? It means, Julia said, that if you stay involved, your name gets pulled into this. Media attention is likely. You and your daughter will be under scrutiny. He thought of Lily's big brown eyes, the way she asked if they were going to be rich, not because she wanted toys, but because she wanted to see him stop worrying. I can't let this hurt her, he said. You won't, Julia replied. We'll protect you as best we can, but ultimately this is your choice. He looked at Marissa again. She looked so small against that big window, sun on her hair, fear in her eyes. What happens if I walk away? He asked quietly. Marissa stared down at her hands. He'll win, she said. Eventually, they'll put someone on the trust who thinks like he does. The money will go where it always goes, to people who already have enough, to reputation, not transformation. Her voice cracked. And I'll have proof, she whispered, that even when I try to change, the gravity of that world is stronger than I am. The idea of her folding back into that life, leashed, silenced, swallowed, made something in Ethan burn. He had been powerless once, when the doctors came with soft voices and hard news, when bills came like tides, relentless and cold, when he watched his wife fade and could do nothing to stop it. This time, power was standing in front of him, wearing a $1,000 suit and a last name that bent rooms. This time, he could push back. He straightened. Okay, he said, then we fight. The weeks that followed felt like living inside a storm. Papers arrived by courier, thick with legal threats and strategic wording. Ethan's mailbox, once filled with coupons and overdue notices, now held letters bearing law firm logos and overnight service labels. Neighbors noticed the cars parked on their quiet street. The lawyers, the reporters sniffing around, the occasional black sedan that lingered too long at the corner before slipping away. At the auto shop, Ray clapped a hand on Ethan's shoulder. Man, you sure you want to be in the middle of rich people drama? I seen movies. That stuff never ends well. Ethan wiped grease from his fingers. I didn't go looking for it. Maybe, Ray said, but it sure as hell found you. At night, after Lily went to bed, he read. Not just the legal briefs, but articles about charitable trusts, fiduciary responsibility, the ugly history of wealth hoarded in ivory towers while people slept on sidewalks outside gleaming offices. Somewhere in the thick of those pages, his fear started to reshape into something else. Resolve. He visited Marissa twice a week. He watched her stabilize, watched color return to her face, watched her laugh, really laugh at Wiley's jokes over video calls. This trust, she explained one afternoon, papers spread across her bed, isn't just some vanity project. I want shelters, real ones, not just cots in a gym. Places with therapists, job training, childcare. I want mobile teams who can find people before they have to hit bottom. Ethan listened, imagining the woman in the rain. Imagining how different that night could have been if she'd had somewhere to go that felt safe. You think we can actually pull that off? He asked. She smiled. With Caldwell money and your stubborn conscience, I do. He chuckled, shaking his head. Stubborn conscience, that's a new one. It's your best feature, she said. He felt a warmth that surprised him. Not romantic, something steadier. Respect. The court hearing took place on a gray Tuesday morning in downtown Boston. The kind of day where the sky and the buildings seemed to blend into one flat, endless sheet of concrete. Ethan wore his best dress shirt, the one he'd kept from Kristen's funeral, ironed and re-ironed for every important day since. It fit a little tighter now, life having added muscle and worry where college softness had once been. Julia met him at the courthouse steps. You ready? She asked. Nope, he said honestly, but I'm here. Her lips twitched. That's all we need. Inside, the courtroom was a small one, just a probate judge, a stenographer, a scattering of benches. No jury. This was about capacity, intent, control. On the opposite side, Nathan sat with his own attorneys, glossy portfolios open, expressions cool and impersonal. He looked like a man fully prepared to win. When they brought Marissa in, escorted by a nurse and Rebecca, Ethan's chest tightened. She wore a simple navy dress and flats, her hair pulled back. Not a heiress, not a patient, just a woman trying to be seen as whole. The judge was an older woman with sharp eyes and a weary patience. She listened as Nathan's attorney argued that Marissa had been mentally unstable, living as a transient, subject to manipulation from strangers of unknown background. Her judgment, he said, was compromised. Any major financial decisions made in the aftermath were suspect. Ethan tried not to flinch each time he was referred to indirectly like that, the mechanic, the layperson, the unknown influence. When it was their turn, Julia called witnesses. The facility's psychiatrist, who testified that Marissa was currently of sound mind, fully oriented, and capable of understanding the consequences of her decisions. A social worker who had interacted with her since admission, describing her insight into her own struggles. Then came Ethan. He took the stand, palms damp, pulse thudding. State your name for the record, the clerk said. Ethan Ward. Julia approached. Mr. Ward, do you know Marissa Caldwell personally? He took a breath. I met her 3 weeks ago in a grocery store parking lot. Tell the court what you saw that day. He described the rain, the way she'd sat under the cart return, braced for judgment, the way no one else had looked at her, the sandwich, the shaking hands, her words, I won't forget this. As he spoke, he could feel eyes on him, judge, lawyers, a handful of observers. She didn't know your name, your income, your background, Julia said. Did you know hers? No, he said. I had no idea who she was. I didn't find out until your associate knocked on my door. Did you ask for any compensation in exchange for giving her food? He almost laughed. No, that would have been pretty messed up. Have you requested or demanded any particular financial benefit from Ms. Caldwell since that interaction? He shook his head. No, I tried to walk away from all of this at first. I told her lawyers I'm a mechanic. I've got a kid. I don't know anything about this world, but she wanted me here. She wanted someone not tied to her family to help keep her honest. And why did you ultimately agree? He glanced at Marissa. She was watching him, eyes shining. "Because I know what it feels like," he said quietly, "to have your life decided by people who think they know what's best for you. Doctors, administrators, insurance reps, collections agents. They're not evil, they just don't see you. Not really, they see risk, liability, cost." He swallowed, forcing the words through his tightening throat. "And I know what it's like to be at the mercy of systems that don't care whether you break as long as the numbers work out. So when someone who has the resources to challenge those systems asks me to help her do it, I can't look my daughter in the eye and say I said no because I was scared of rich people." Silence settled over the room, heavy and electric. Nathan's attorney rose for cross-examination. He tried to needle him about his finances, his debts, his life insurance payouts after Kristen's death. Tried to suggest that Ethan might subconsciously view Marissa as a replacement PR. "Oh, Viters. Are you in debt, Mr. Ward?" he pressed. "Yes," Ethan said plainly, "like most people I know." "And isn't it true that acceptance of the advisory role will come with a salary and benefits package far beyond your current income?" He thought of Lily's busted sneakers, the nights he'd stayed up wondering how to cover the next rent hike. "Yes," he said, "probably. And you don't see a conflict there?" "I see an opportunity," Ethan replied, meeting his gaze. "To do meaningful work, use money to help people instead of just multiply itself, and finally give my kids some security. That doesn't make me a saint, but it doesn't make me a predator either." The attorney leaned in. "If the court denies your involvement, will you still care about the homeless, Mr. Ward?" Ethan's answer came without hesitation. "Yes," he said, "because I cared before I knew anyone would notice." The judge watched him for a long moment, eyes thoughtful. "Thank you, Mr. Ward," she said. "You may step down." He returned to his seat beside Julia, knees weak. Hours later, after more arguments and expert testimony, the judge retired to her chambers. The wait for her decision felt like standing on the edge of a cliff, wind howling below. Marissa's hands twisted the hem of her dress. "If she rules in his favor," she whispered, "they'll put me in a gilded cage and call it compassion." Ethan wanted to tell her it would be okay, but he'd learned the hard way not to make promises he couldn't control. Instead, he took her hand. Whatever happened, she wouldn't face it alone. When the judge finally returned, the whole room seemed to lean forward. She adjusted her glasses, glanced from one side of the courtroom to the other, and began. "I have reviewed the evidence, listened to testimony, and considered the relevant case law," she said. "There is no question Ms. Caldwell has experienced significant psychological distress and hardship. However, there is also no question, based on the clear and consistent expert evaluations, that she currently possesses the capacity to make her own financial and personal decisions." Nathan's jaw clenched. "While the court acknowledges Mr. Caldwell's stated concern for his sister's welfare and the family company," the judge continued, "we also recognize that concern does not equate to control." She turned slightly toward Marissa. "Ms. Caldwell, you are an adult of sound mind. You have the right to determine how your assets are used, whom you trust, and what legacy you wish to leave. This court will not revoke that right because your choices make others uncomfortable." Marissa's eyes filled with tears. "As such," the judge concluded, "the competency challenge is denied. The motion to freeze the charitable trust is denied. The court finds no evidence of coercion by Mr. Ward. If Ms. Caldwell wishes to retain him in the roles specified, that is her legal prerogative." A single, sharp exhale of relief burst from Ethan's chest. Julia's shoulders sagged almost imperceptibly. Nathan rose abruptly. "Your Honor, with respect." She cut him off with a look. "Mr. Caldwell, my ruling stands. You may pursue an appeal if you wish, but I would advise considering the public relations implications of appearing to fight your sister's philanthropy in open court." The warning landed. For the first time, Nathan looked uncertain. The judge nodded once. "Court is adjourned." The gavel's crack echoed like thunder in Ethan's ribs. It was over. Not the work, that was only beginning. but the worst of the war for control. They survived it. The grand opening took place 4 months later on a warm May afternoon. The sky a clear, hopeful blue above the newly renovated brick building that had once been an abandoned warehouse on the edge of town. Now a simple sign hung above the glass double doors. The Ridgeway Center, a Caldwell Ward initiative. When Ethan had seen the mock-up of that name, he'd protested. "You don't have to put my name on anything," he'd said. Marissa had just smiled. "It isn't about ego, it's about story. People need to know this came from both worlds, money and lived experience. Besides," she'd added with a mischievous glint, "it sounds good." Inside, the building had been transformed. Warm lighting, clean cots behind sliding partitions, private counseling rooms, a play area for kids near the intake desk. A small kitchen hummed with energy as volunteers prepped trays of food that smelled like actual home-cooked meals, not rationed survival. "Look, Daddy," Lily said now, tugging at his hand as they stood in the lobby. "They have a homework room and books. Can I volunteer here when I'm 10? He laughed, ruffling her hair. "Kiddo, you're already volunteering. You've put up with more lawyer meetings than most adults I know." She beamed. Reporters milled about, cameras slung over shoulders. But for once, Ethan wasn't terrified of them. The narrative was different now, not scandal, not suspicion. Change. Marissa stood near the podium at the front of the main hall, wearing a simple blouse and slacks, her hair down around her shoulders. She looked free. The haunted shadows were still there. Trauma didn't vanish just because a judge said you were competent, but they were no longer the whole story. As people gathered, she stepped up to the microphone, hands steady. "Thank you for being here," she began, her voice carrying clearly. "Some of you know me as a Caldwell. Some of you only know that last name because it's on a factory or a scholarship or a scandal. Some of you had no idea who I was until you heard someone say billionaire heiress has breakdown." A soft ripple of uncomfortable laughter moved through the crowd. She smiled faintly. "That's okay. I didn't really know who I was either for a long time." She told them about losing herself in privilege, about leaving, about the streets. Not in lurid detail, this wasn't trauma theater, but with enough honesty that no one could mistake how far she'd fallen. "And then," she said, glancing at Ethan, "a stranger handed me a sandwich in the rain and treated me like I was human. Not a burden, not a cautionary tale, just a person who was cold and hungry." His throat tightened. "I decided that day," she continued, "that if I ever made it out of that darkness, I would build something so that the next woman in that parking lot, the next kid on that sidewalk, the next dad trying to hold his world together, would have somewhere to go that wasn't just a last resort, but a first step." She gestured around them. "This is the first of many steps." She introduced the Ridgeway Center's mission, comprehensive support for people experiencing homelessness, with wraparound services instead of Band-Aids. She mentioned advisory panels that included people who'd actually lived on the streets. She announced partnerships with local clinics and job placement programs. "And this," she said, "is Ethan." He nearly jumped as she motioned him up. The crowd applauded. He walked to the mic, aware of cameras, of eyes, of how absurd it felt for a mechanic from a two-bedroom rental to stand beside a Caldwell at a podium. Hey," he said, clearing his throat. "Public speaking is not on my list of skills, so I'll keep this short." Light laughter eased some of the tightness in his chest. "I don't have a lot of fancy words," he continued. "I know what it's like to worry about bills, to lose someone you love, to feel like the world decided your story for you before you got a say. What I'm learning is that, sometimes when you stick your neck out for someone, offer a meal, a ride, a second of dignity, you're not just changing their night. You might be changing both your lives." He glanced at Marissa, who smiled back, eyes bright. "I didn't save her," he said. "She saved herself. I just happened to be there at the right minute. Now I get to help her pass that on, and I get to show my daughter what it looks like when we use whatever we've got to make things a little less cruel." He stepped back from the mic, cheeks warm, heart pounding. Not from fear this time, but from something that felt suspiciously like pride. After the ribbon was cut, silver scissors slicing through green satin, People began filtering through the center, admiring the dorms, the counseling offices, the bright mural painted by a local artist on the far wall. A woman standing under pouring rain, hand outstretched, another hand reaching toward her. Later, when the formalities were over and the reporters had drifted to their deadlines, Ethan slipped outside for some air. The evening light was soft, the parking lot still new, lines crisp and white. But something about the angle of the building, the way the wind slid between cars, reminded him of that first night. He closed his eyes for a second and could almost smell wet asphalt, hear the rattle of abandoned carts. "You okay?" Marissa's voice floated from behind him. He turned. She was leaning against the brick wall, arms folded loosely, no longer shivering, no longer hiding. "Yeah," he said, "just thinking." "Dangerous habit," she teased lightly. He smiled. "You did it, you know, you stood up to them, to him. You could have gone back to the easy life, the protected life." "Wasn't very easy," she said, "just well upholstered." They stood in comfortable silence for a moment. "Do you ever regret it?" he asked quietly. "Choosing me, dragging some random single dad into your mess?" She considered. "Every once in a while when my lawyers send me itemized bills," she said dryly. Then her smile faded, replaced by something softer. "Mostly, though, no, you anchored me to something I could trust. I'd spent so long surrounded by people who wanted pieces of me. You were the first one who wanted nothing." He glanced back at the center, where he could see Lily through the glass, chatting animatedly with a volunteer and pointing at the homework room. "TH. That's not entirely true," he said. "I wanted you to win." Her eyes shone. "Then I guess we both did." He shifted, suddenly self-conscious. "You know I'm still learning, right, about all this?" He nodded toward the building. "I'm going to screw stuff up." "Good," she said. "So will I, but we'll have a board and staff and people we're actually serving to tell us when we get it wrong. And we'll listen. That's the part my family never did." He nodded. A cool breeze brushed past, stirring the edges of her hair. "I meant what I wrote in that letter," she said quietly. "About honoring your kindness. I could have just cut you a check and disappeared, but that would have been less than you deserved." "I don't feel like I deserve any of this," he admitted. "The salary, the title. Sometimes I still wake up thinking I made it up, that I'm gonna be back under my car in the shop, worrying about whether I can afford Lily's field trip fee, and none of this will have happened." She tilted her head. "And is that so bad, the under-the-car part, I mean?" He thought about it, then smiled. "Honestly, the work was never the worst part. It's a good kind of tired. It's the helplessness I don't miss." "Then keep some of the old life," she said. "Work a day or two a week at the shop if you want. Stay rooted. This doesn't have to become a different kind of gilded cage for you." He looked at her, gratitude swelling in his chest. "You really don't want to own me, do you?" he said. "God, no," she replied. "I just want to build something with someone who won't let me forget why we started." They fell quiet again, watching the sunset smear gold along the horizon. After a while, Marissa nodded toward the parking lot. "You know," she said, "I drove past the old grocery store last week. The cart return is still there. They repainted it. I almost didn't recognize it." He chuckled. "Guess we both got makeovers." She smiled. "Maybe we should put a bench there, a little plaque, for whoever sits under it next." "What would it say?" he asked. She thought for a moment. "Then you are seen." He swallowed against the sudden thickness in his throat. "Yeah," he said, "I like that." They turned back toward the building, where the hum of conversation and clinking dishes floated out through the open doors. Inside, the first guests were already signing in, guided to warm beds and hot meals by staff who knew their names. Ethan felt a small hand slip into his. "Daddy," Lily said, looking up at him with shining eyes, "can we come here every week?" He squeezed her fingers. "We probably will," he said. "This is kind of our place now." She grinned. "Mom would like it." He looked at her, the way the fading light caught the hint of her mother's smile. "Yeah," he said softly, "she really would." As they walked back inside, into light, into noise, into the messy, hopeful work of trying to make the world a little less cruel. Ethan glanced at Marissa one last time. She met his gaze and nodded, that same faint, determined smile he'd seen in the courtroom, in the facility, now on this new threshold. Months ago, she'd sat in a parking lot, soaked and invisible, telling him she wouldn't forget his kindness. Now, standing in a building she'd pulled from the ashes of her own broken history, surrounded by people whose lives might tilt just a little toward hope because of it, Ethan understood something. Neither would he. He had fed a homeless woman. Weeks later, her lawyers had knocked on his door. And somehow, in the wild, unpredictable chain of everything that had followed, they had all ended up feeding something much larger. A quiet, stubborn belief that one small act of decency, offered without expectation, could rewrite the story of more than one life.